Dear learners, I welcome you all to this lecture on understanding human rights. Uh, so far, we have discussed the different aspects or different dimensions of human rights. And while discussing the contemporary discourse on human rights, we have been discussing about the rights of sexual minorities. We also discussed the terrorism, counter-terrorism, and how the human rights violation or the issues of human rights are involved in terrorism and counter-terrorism. And we also discussed the challenges and the challenges faced by the LGBTQ population in the different parts of the world, including India. Today, we are going to discuss one of the most important issues that has attracted the attention of all these days, and that is rights relating to environment. So, first of all, we'll go like this that we will try to understand that what are the challenges and why, there is a lot of discussion all over the world relating to environmental rights, and why the green activism has increased significantly in last few decades. We will also discuss, the what are the human rights that are called environmental rights and that have been recognized in the different parts of the world. Then we will discuss need for environmental protection and the blame game that we are seeing, the universal environmental rights that will be discussed, evolution of environmental rights, how it has evolved, and then finally we will try to conclude here, and then we will continue in this lecture on environmental rights. So, uh, first of all, understanding the problem and how this environmental right has the discourse on environmental rights has attracted the attention of the different kind of scholars, countries, policymakers, and all. So, number one thing that we have to remember that we you must have been hearing about global warming and climate change. So, the global warming and climate change are realities of our time. There were some leaders, of course, political leaders, who said that global warming and climate change is a myth. But it has been established by the scientists uh, that it is not a myth, rather it is a reality, and a reality that we have to face, although we don't want to face. And there are many problems, but because of global warming, there are many problems. If they are not addressed, the issue of global warming and climate change is not addressed, then what we are going to witness is called doomsday. And also, the time is running out. If the blame game continues, and if the countries or the policymakers and the leaders, they don't accept that this is a challenge which is going to be faced by all mankind, and if we are not coming together, all human beings, uh, irrespective of political boundaries, this is one issue that should transcend the political boundary first of all, because environmental degradation or environmental destruction is something that cannot be countered or contained without international cooperation. So that is one thing that we have to remember. Global warming can lead to serious environmental problems. For example, it is already leading to melting glaciers, leading to a rise in sea level. So if the sea level is rising, then there are other issues involved. It can further increase the risk of drought and flood, disturb biodiversity, change the climate pattern, and affect agriculture adversely. So, because of global warming and climate change, that always is discussed under the environmental destruction. So, what is happening? That these are the challenges that we are facing. Global warming and climate change will cause displacement of people on a gigantic scale, as the rise in sea level will lead to the loss of coastal land and submerging of habitats into the sea. That is the problem. And it has already started happening, that the coastal areas or the coastal cities, towns, and settlements, they are going to submerge into sea. Why? Because the sea level is rising, and it is rising with the pace of the rise of sea level is frightening. So if you see it continues to rise, then many cities, many countries, they will submerge in the sea. It will also disturb the for example, you'll find that when the people have to migrate, then the migration of people will develop social tensions and unrest, which will be pretty challenging to manage. So, for example, if the area, the habitats, cities, settlements, if they are submerged in the sea, then naturally people will flee from those areas and they will try to settle in, adjacent countries or cities. So within a country, first of all, it will develop social tension, because if the people in large number are coming from one city to another city, that will create many other problems. So that is within country, it will develop conflict, it will develop unrest and tension. On the other hand, if they are these people are uh, marching from one area to another area without respecting the political boundaries, so a refugee influx will be there, migration will be there, and again this migrant problem will be very difficult to manage again. So that kind of social conflict, that it may, the potential it has to create in the society, that first of all you have to we have to anticipate, and accordingly we have to do something. The impact of global warming and climate change on human health and wildlife is disastrous. So you'll find again, global warming and climate change. It is not only that these things will happen, but the on daily basis, human beings and the will be suffering, and other living beings will be suffering, and that has also started happening. That you are already seeing. So what will happen, for example, if we saw at the time of corona that there were no beds in the hospitals, the health system or the healthcare facilities that the different countries have maintained so far, they were nowhere when the people were dying of corona. So ultimately, because of this kind of situation may arise at any time. So this is the reason that again people are warning, experts and the scientists are warning that this the impact of global warming and climate change on human health and wildlife is disastrous. Under these circumstances, experts are trying to establish the cause and effect relationship between environmental disasters and anthropogenic activities. And here comes our discussion. First of all, you see the debate is that who is responsible for environmental destruction? Why this is happening? Why there is, why our planet is heating up? And if our planet is heating up, is it a natural phenomenon or human beings are responsible? You will find that, of course, the people are divided, but the experts and the scientists are saying that, we cannot say that exclusively it is something that human activities are responsible, but to a great extent, the heating of planet is there because of the human activities. Of course, some natural causes are also there, but to a great extent, human activities, anthropogenic activities, they are responsible for heating up of our planet. So, if the global warming is there, it is resulting in climate change, and if the climate change is there, then the crop pattern and many other things are going to be disturbed. So now, when we say that this is because of the anthropogenic activities and the pace of the global warming, you'll find the acceleration in the pace of global warming in the post-industrial period. It means after the industrial revolution, there is an acceleration in the pace of global warming, and it has given birth to a debate over the model pattern of development adopted by humans. So now question arises that if human activities are responsible, if the developmental model that different countries have adopted, especially in the post-industrial period, so what can we do? What is the alternative? Uh, and when we try to find alternative, then it becomes very difficult that what should be the answer. So there are many people who are suggesting that all production and all development, all progress must be in complete harmony with nature. Human beings, they should not try to conquer nature, rather they should try to live. They should try to live in complete harmony with nature. If they are trying to provoke nature, then the nature will retaliate, and this retaliation we are already seeing in the form of global warming and climate change, drought, floods, and all rising sea level, etc. So, this kind of debate is there. However, the national governments in all the country, they are under tremendous pressure because the population is already, rising, and because of that, they have to take care of their population, and for that, they have to go for developmental work, industrialization, etc. When they are going, it is going to lead to cutting of forests, deforestation, contamination of water, and all. So because of that, you will find that this kind of problem arises. Political leadership in most of the countries is not very sincere so far as meaningful debate on the pattern of development and the progress is concerned. So they are not very serious, because no country is ready to say that we are not going to have big industries, or we are going to take care of the water bodies. We will not destroy them. It is, for them it is becoming impossible. So when this is happening, that our planet is already warming, it is heating up, we are finding the disastrous consequences of all these things, the result is already in front of us, then you'll find it has given birth to green activism. The green peace, the green rights, environmental rights, etc., are the result of this debate. So you'll find that people are saying that if you say international peace and security, so international peace and security must include green peace as well. It is not only that the people are going to be killed by bombs and the guns only. If the clean environment is not there, then again peaceful life is not possible. So the this green rights movement, or the environmental rights movement, or the green peace movement, that has become stronger because of this kind of problem. This lecture will explore the nature, content, scope, and challenges of environmental rights. So, environmental rights and expanding catalog of human rights. That is the point that we are going to discuss now. As we discussed in previous lectures, human rights have evolved over a long period of time. We trace the origin of the Western concept of human rights from the Magna Carta 1215 to the establishment of the United Nations and the development of the International Bill of Rights. So, in the evolution of the concept of human rights, and in our previous lectures, we have been discussing how the Western notion of human rights, that emerged, and we discussed from Magna Carta to the French Revolution to the American War of Independence, then socialist revolutions, and then establishment of the United Nations UN Charter mentioning about the reaffirming faith in fundamental human rights. Then we discussed that the different treaties, conventions adopted by the United Nations. We also discussed about the International Bill of Rights, that is UDHR, ICCPR, ICSCR, all. So since that discussion is already before you, so you can understand how human rights have evolved. But you will find that the discourse on human rights once primarily focused on civil and political rights. That was one stage. When from Magna Carta to the French Revolution, you will find it was civil and political rights that was the main focus. With socialist revolutions, the focus shifted to economic, social, and cultural rights. So again, thanks to Marxism and socialism, that uh, this social, economic, and cultural rights were emphasized. And after the liberation of colonies in 1950s and 60s, the right to development, and of course the right to self-determination and other group rights were emphasized. So that is the journey that you have seen. In the contemporary discourse on human rights, we have been discussing about the rights of sexual minorities. That is one of the contemporary issues. And again, the another important contemporary issue is, of course, the environmental rights. So, these rights we already discussed, that the first generation human rights, second generation human rights, third generation human rights, that also include environmental rights, of course. However, since the 1970s, the scope of human rights has widened to encompass the intricate relationship between humans and their environment. This issue, that industrialization earlier, it has led to exodus of people from rural areas to urban areas. And then we discuss how the plight of the working class, that was something that motivated Marx to advance his theory or ideology for the emancipation of the working class. But you will find what has happened, that since 1970s, the scope of human rights has widened to encompass the intricate relationship between humans and their environment. What is this? That what should be the relationship between humans and their environment? Uh, if the people are, you know, continuing with this developmental model, then environmental destruction will be such that doomsday will be approaching very soon. This evolution has given rise to the concept of environmental rights, recognizing the fundamental connection between a healthy planet and the well being of all its inhabitants. That has been, again, now, this is the discourse, contemporary discourse. That what is being emphasized, that the concept of environmental rights recognizing the fundamental connection between a healthy planet and a well being of all its inhabitants. It means if the planet is healthy, then all the human beings and other inhabitants, those who are there on this planet, they will be healthy. If the environment is not good, if the environment is polluted, if the environmental destruction is there, then everything will be destroyed. This understanding is already there, and you'll find there is an acceptability to this kind of understanding. People have got sensitized because they are already seeing before their eyes that what is happening, drought, floods, they all are happening, and that's why the natural disasters now, they are very common. So this is the reason that people have already got sensitized, and that's why this discourse has become a dominant feature of the human rights space. Environmental rights go beyond simply ensuring clean air and water. Again, in the very beginning, you will find it was air pollution, water pollution, that was something that was being discussed, then noise pollution, other kind of pollution people have started discussing. But the horizon is widening. So it is going beyond simply discussing what is called the right to clean air and water. Of course, this is the most vital right that you can say, that right to safe and drinking water and right to clean air. Why? Because many cities, our own New Delhi, for example, and many other cities of the world, they are not cities. Rather, on many occasions, you'll find that they have been compared with concentration camps. They have been compared with gas chambers. So oxygen level is so low in these cities. So ultimately, you can imagine that if oxygen level is so low in the city, then what will happen to human health? So that is why it is not only clean air and water, but many other issues are also being addressed today. So beyond air pollution and water pollution, the human rights discourse, so the environmental rights discourse, it has moved beyond. In fact, the claims of environmental rights are broadening the scope of the right to life, and that is a important point to note. Very important point, that right to clean environment is being understood in the context of right to life. That if the right to a healthy environment is not there, it means it is violation of the right to life of the people. The right to a clean environment is now understood as part of the right to life. So it means that if the polluted environment is there, that is violation of the right to life of the people. Need for environmental protection and the blame game. We have already understood that what is the challenge before us, and if nothing is done, then what will happen. So the environmental destruction, degradation, ozone depletion, or hole in the ozone layer, global warming, climate change, they are the manifestations, of course, of the environmental degradation. So you can say drought, rising sea level, or exodus of people from the coastal areas to other areas, or that we are seeing the drought and the floods simultaneously in one country. Again, you see that the climate change and global warming, of course, they are manifestations of environmental degradation. So it cannot be denied that environmental degradation is one of the most challenging issues faced by humans living on the planet Earth. So this is a problem that is being faced by all human beings. That this is such a problem, and in which we all have common future and common threats. So the everything, every human beings or all the living creatures are going to be affected because of this problem. So that is why it is one of the most challenging issues faced by all humans living on the planet Earth. Of course, we cannot blame the other species, because they are not responsible for this. So because of human activity, the other species are also facing this problem. So the main culprits are human beings. For example, you see that what kind of developmental model we have adopted, that we say that it is greenhouse gas emission which is responsible for the environmental degradation. So why this greenhouse gas emission is there? It is said that it is because of the anthropogenic activities, that is, uh, you see the energy consumption, how we are doing, and the industrial revolution that has also led to it. So all these things are responsible. But don't you think all the people, those who are using air condition, those who are using air conditioned car, or those who are using air condition at their home, all the ACs, if one family is using 3 4 ACs at home during the scorching heat in our country, for example, when the temperature is 45 degree, so how much we are contributing to greenhouse gas emission and the heating up of our planet, that we have to see, that introspection is to be there. And also, when we are heating up our planet, means, for example, if I am having AC at my home, then somebody living in my neighborhood who cannot afford AC, he has not done anything, but I am going to heat up his space, and I am going to make my space very cozy, comfortable, and going to heat up his space, because if he is having window near my AC, then he is going to bear the brunt, and he has not given any contribution so far as this heating of generation of heat through my AC is concerned. So in this sense, what happened, that unless we have a collective approach, uh, so it is not going to be solved. The individual approach, for example, I can make my space comfortable so that if I will be having AC without caring for the other people who are going to share this space with us. So that is why somebody who, for example, somebody may have a hut in my near my building or your building, and then what is the position? So in this sense, you will find that there are many human rights activists, environmental activists. They say that we all are environmental terrorists. It means we all are environmental terrorists. It means we are contributing to the environmental degradation by using AC cars, AC houses, and all. So, we are generating heat, and that is leading to the heating up of our planet. Uh, so this is also being discussed everywhere. Uh, Considering the threats it poses to the present and future generations, it is not only that we are going to suffer, our future generations are also going to suffer because of our activities. Because we are not going for what is called sustainable development. Development must be sustainable. It is being emphasized. It is not, you cannot have, you are going to destroy forest and land and water, everything we are consuming, then not leaving nothing for our future generations. That is a crime, of course. So that is why, considering the threats it poses to the present and future generations, all humans must address the challenge with utmost sincerity and immediacy. Means you cannot delay anymore. You cannot afford to delay. So this is something that sensitization should be there in our mind. So one of the purposes of this course is also to sensitize about human rights. It is not only teaching and learning. The sensitization about human rights is important, and that is why all the people have to be sensitized so far as the threat that we are going to face because of this environmental degradation, and what is our contribution. Sometimes we think that we are not doing much to the ozone depletion and all, but you just see our life pattern and the things that we are using without having an iota of care for others, those who are sharing this planet with us. So that sincerity is needed. So that's why you'll find this realization was there. And then in 1972, you'll find the Stockholm Conference was there. That was the first significant response toward addressing the issue of environmental degradation at the international level. You'll find that this understanding was already there, that the environment is becoming bad, and ultimately what will happen, that survival of the humanity, survival of all living creatures will be difficult. So in 1970s, you see that activism was shown, and ultimately the Stockholm Conference of 1972 was organized, and that was the most significant, or the first significant response toward addressing the issue of environmental degradation at the international level. What we should realize, this conference, if that is being held, it means that people have got sensitized, and at least the people have started accepting that global warming, climate change, environmental degradation, all these are reality, they are not myths. Since then, many international and regional conferences and talks have been held to mitigate the threat of environmental degradation leading to global warming and climate change. So, environmental degradation is leading to global warming and climate change. Of course, there are manifestations. So, many conferences were organized, many activism that we saw, and because of that, we will find that many regional and international conferences, either under the aegis of the United Nations and other multilateral arrangements, you'll find that conferences were organized. That is the first step. It means by that way we are going to acknowledge that this problem is a big problem and that is why it must be addressed. The contribution of states to global environmental destruction varies. That again you have to remember. And that the who is responsible for global warming, climate change, environmental degradation. So the contribution of states to global environmental destruction varies. It means the vulnerabilities and challenges states face are also not the same, and so are their responses, priorities, and concerns. So it means that the contribution of a country which has not industrialized itself, you know, or it is not a country which is having a lot of industries. It is still have cover of 20%, 30% of area under forest. That country cannot be compared with the countries who have already destroyed their forest, flora and fauna and everything, and they have gone for rapid industrialization. By that way, they have been able to develop materially. It means they have finished product they have, and that is why they have control over international market. But there are countries who have not industrialized. There are countries who are still trying to live with conventional, system and conventional, ways of life. So that is why, therefore, the contribution of states to global environmental destruction varies. So the highly industrialized country cannot be compared with the countries which are not industrialized. But it is not only the destruction, environmental destruction, what is the contribution of the countries, but you also find that the vulnerabilities and challenges state face are also not the same. And so are their responses, priorities, and concerns. Environmental degradation is a global problem that needs greater international cooperation to address. So it cannot be denied that it is a problem that needs greater international cooperation. It means that states have to rise above their parochial national interest and they have to go for developing international cooperation because global efforts is needed. International cooperation is needed. However, the interstate framework of the international relations and the challenges of international cooperation we have to understand. So it means if you see the international relations today, it is international. The international relation is based on interstate framework. When I say interstate framework, where the states are the major actors. The states are the major actors means sovereign states who are internally supreme and externally free. They are the major actors. Even the multilateral arrangements, they are also the arrangements between the states. For example, if the United Nations is there, after all, who is going to make decisions in the United Nations? Whether it is the General Assembly or whether it is Security Council. Of course, the representative of the states who are sitting over there. So that interstate framework we have to understand when we are discussing this environmental degradation and we are trying to ensure the enjoyment of environmental rights for the people. So that interstate framework we have to understand, and then the blame game we have to understand that is there between the states. Whenever we try to develop international cooperation, the first problem that is encountered at the international level is the north-south divide. And the north-south divide is again, it is based on some pertinent issues. Number one is the historical responsibility argument. The global south is saying that anthropogenic activities that started long back, that is in 18th and 19th century, they are responsible for heating up of our planet or ozone depletion. And these anthropogenic activities means industrial revolution. So who were the countries that were responsible for industrial revolution or reaping up the fruit of industrial revolution. They were, of course, advanced countries of the global north. Global south was still backward, or global south was mostly colonies of this global north. So that is why the historical responsibility, it means that these are the countries of the global north who have been polluting our planet, who have been causing ozone depletion, who have been creating global warming for more than 3 centuries. And the global south, most of the countries of the global south who have already embarked upon the journey of development through industrialization, they are the late entrants in this process. So that is why historical responsibility means that the countries who have been polluting our planet for the last 300 years, they have major responsibility in comparison to the countries of the global south. Because if you see the development in the global south, means industrialization of the global south, it is a post-World War II phenomenon. So most of the countries, the developing countries, especially, or the underdeveloped countries, so they have been trying to do these things only for last 70, 80 years. So that is why historical responsibility, the countries of the global north, who are responsible for global warming, climate change, drought, floods, and of course because of the anthropogenic activity, so they have more responsibility so far as addressing the challenge of the global warming and climate change is concerned. Then the second important issue is the issue of per capita greenhouse gas emission. The per capita energy consumption is much lower in the global south than in the global north. So again, you see, if you see the per capita greenhouse gas emission, what happens that when we take country into account, when we make country as a unit, so we can identify China and India as major polluters. But you see that India and China, when they are going to be branded as major polluters, so far as environmental degradation is concerned, or the greenhouse gas emission is concerned, then we have to also take into account their vast population. For example, China and India together, they are almost 38-39% of the world population. So if 38-39% of the world population living in these two countries, it means that if, say, for example, means approximately 40% of the population living in two countries, what is their contribution to global warming, climate change, ozone depletion, greenhouse gas emission, that you have to see. And these two countries together cannot be compared with Europe and the United States of America together. Because you see the population, it is almost 40% of the world population. So therefore, what is their argument? Means the countries of the global south, we are densely populated, many of them. So that is why their argument is that the global north cannot be compared with global south if we take into account the greenhouse gas emission. First of all, you have to see what is the population. And that's why it is not the country-wise, greenhouse gas emission that is important. You have to see the per capita greenhouse gas emission. And when we are going to take into per capita greenhouse gas emission, we will find that the energy consumption and other consumption in the global north is much higher than the energy consumption that is there in the global south. If you see the per capita, energy consumption. So therefore, this is the reason that the per capita greenhouse gas emission should be taken into account, and the countries as a whole should not be blamed. So the historical responsibility argument, and then the issue of per capita greenhouse gas emission or the per capita energy consumption, these issues are important. Besides that, there are several other issues that we will be discussing in our next lecture, when we are going to continue on the universal environmental rights that have been recognized at the international level, and the green peace movement or the green activism that you are seeing. But it cannot be denied that this blame game, whether it is a global south and north divide, or whether it is the national interest argument that is advanced by most of the nations, that it is against our national interest. So the parochial national interest is to be compromised sometimes, because the existence or the very survival of all living creature is dependent upon the international cooperation. So therefore this national interest argument, and that too narrow parochial national interest argument, cannot be acceptable to the Greenpeace movement, or what you can say that the green rights movement. So that is why these people are rising above this ideological, national, and other kind of boundaries, and it is being emphasized that it is a global problem, and that is why the international cooperation is the need of the hour. And if we continue blaming each other that who did what, then what will happen? That nothing will be there on this planet. And this is the reason that it is being emphasized that the countries, they must come together. And there are scholars who are arguing that it may lead to global governance. The global governance in the sense, because environmental issue is something that cannot be regulated, or that cannot be addressed by the efforts of few countries. You need global efforts, you need international cooperation, and that is why we are marching towards global governance, because of this challenge that we are facing because of the environmental pollution, environmental degradation. We will continue. You can understand the significance of this topic, because it is not something it is going to affect one region, one country only. It is going to affect every one of us. And this is the reason that the intricacies, what are the nuances of the arguments, what are the challenges, what are the threats, what are the prospects, we'll discuss in our next lecture. Thank you very much.